Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Coach Marty, and this week we are going to talk about bike fit. So last week we talked about ways to get free speed on the course that you don't actually have to train more for. This week is all about bike fit, which is another way for free speed. You just got to pay for it. So what are we talking about when we're talking about bike fit? The first thing that we're talking about is putting you in a position that is not going to injure you just by virtue of the position. The biggest error people make with their bike fit is the seat being too low. If your seat is too low, it's going to put a lot of stress on your patella tendon in your knee, and over time you're going to develop like a chronic condition from too much stress in that joint. So seat too low is one of the biggest problems. The next big problem is too much space between the seat and the handlebars, meaning the rider is way too stretched out. That's going to put a lot of stress on lower back as well as hips. So those are two just don't get hurt bike fit tips. Now I need to qualify this. I am not a bike fitter. I'm a triathlon coach. I outsource my bike fits because it is not something I specialize in, but I can look at somebody and say, you're okay or you're not okay, right? So we're talking about the major improvements now. So the three components that we're considering for triathlon bike fit is going to be your aerodynamic profile, your power, can you sustain a power output in that aerodynamic position, and then your comfort. Three things: aerodynamics, power, comfort. Number three is very important. Now, if you go online and you do some research, you're going to find a good number of articles about professional bike fit positions. And these are people who are in their mid to late 20s with 3% body fat, and they train 20, 30, 35 hours a week. That is a very different equation for somebody who is in their 40s, not 3% body fat, and trains 6 hours a week, maybe 8 hours a week, maybe. All right, so you gotta take everything with a grain of salt when you look at one of the professional triathletes in a super duper tucked aerodynamic position, and you read that they can hold 370 watts for 4.5 hours. It's a different world. You need to consider you and where you're coming from. I will tell you that as your flexibility reduces with age, your bike fit needs to change. If you're not analyzing or reanalyzing your bike fit every handful of years, you're setting yourself up for more and more discomfort and potentially injury issues. Right? So the short version of that is the older you get, the less aggressive you need to be in your position. So number one, aerodynamics. There are some methods for determining your best aerodynamics. Number one is going to a wind tunnel, getting time in a wind tunnel. That is going to cost you money. But if you are very competitive and you're looking for, placing in half Ironman and Ironman competitions, this is something you should consider. You work with a professional bike fitter in an aerodynamic tunnel, and you can work on the position, the power, and the comfort. If you don't have access to a tunnel, then again, working with a professional bike fitter, they can walk you through some of the ranges of things that work for people, and then listen to you and how your body works in order to find that optimal position for you. I made a graphic again. This is graphic week. It's pretty exciting stuff. So this is the triumvirate, something like that, of aerodynamic, power, and comfort with bike position. All right. Now, if you are super duper Johnny, you're going to be over on that side of that triangle, right? If you look at this like a Venn diagram, he's going for power and aerodynamics. If he's 24 years old, he's super flexible, and he's not concerned about comfort because he wants to finish as fast as possible. Now, if you're also ran Johnny, you might be a little more over here, right? So let's say you're not as concerned with the time. You need to be very specific with your bike fitter and explain you would like to be able to ride all day without being uncomfortable. because I can tell you from experience, as could many triathletes around the world, that the aero position by itself is not the most comfortable position, all in all. Now you can get used to it, especially if you're seated appropriately on the aero bars, if your seat position is good, you can get used to that, but it's not super comfortable. And in order to get more comfortable, you need to raise up your front end and or look at other things that are going on with your hips and legs. So if you are not trying to be the fastest possible, I would value comfort higher than either aerodynamics and secondary power. Now, power is its own animal. Some of the positions that you may be asked to sit in while you're testing out your aerodynamics are going to reduce your power. This is a fact. However, if your aerodynamics are improved so much that they overcome your power loss, that's a win in the grand scheme of things, right? Again, you got to work with somebody who is really good at this. A guy like me who is a triathlon coach but does not specialize in bike fit is not the person for that. The other consideration with all of this is that it really depends on how much time you're going to put on the bike. If you're only training for sprint and Olympic distance triathlon, then you do not have to value the comfort as high as an athlete who's doing longer distance, because even if you're not the fastest athlete out there, you're probably not going to be on the bike for more than a couple hours in an Olympic distance race, international, 40 kilometer, right? And that's going 13 miles an hour, 12 miles an hour. So a lot of us can put up with, a relative amount of discomfort for a couple of hours. But if you're going out on long training rides with your friends and you're finding that your back really hurts, things like that, then again, you need to look at the comfort of the position. So the key pieces for bike position: seat height has to be appropriate. That's a health and injury issue. Your distance from your seat to the handlebars has to be appropriate, meaning you can't be riding on a frame that's too small or too large, because then that impacts how you reach forward. And as far as triathlon position goes, in general, your elbows should be positioned underneath your ear if you drop down from there. If your elbows are too far out, you're going to be putting a lot of stress on your body, right, like this. So you want to be more like this. And if your elbows are past under your ears, you're going to be leaned too far forward and you're going to be all out of balance. So, in summary, having a good bike fit is free speed. Number one, you're going to pay for it. That's number two. And then if you are less concerned or older and you have to be more concerned with your comfort, you need to value the comfort section of this much more highly. Bike fit has evolved over time, much like, do we use 21 inch or 21 centimeter tires versus 25 centimeter tires? I forget if it's millimeter or centimeter off the top of my head. So the wheel size and stuff like that has changed, as well as the bike position has changed. You will see that more people are riding a little higher in the front and they're tucking their head in behind their hands. So that's all I can think of on that. Again, you would put this in the things I can do to get faster without actually training more. That's that video right there. This is us. Thank you for listening to me ramble. I'll see you next time.